I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Oscar winner Juliette Binoche. Juliette, I want to explore how your experience on this series either challenged or reinforced some of your preconceptions about Coco Chanel, and how did your point of view change after portraying her?
I'm not sure I had an idea about her. Uh, um, I was not that interested,
Yeah.
to tell the truth. And actually, as I went well, reading the first script, and then after that, starting to read about her, then I became fascinated by this woman who has like many different lives. Uh, First of all, the childhood was so miserable and terrible, like you can read in the worst kind of stories, like losing her mother when she was 11 years old, and her father abandoning the family, and they were really living in a very poor kind of state. And so there was this part, and then after that, the first war, she really came across as a great fashion designer, but coming from poverty and becoming this well known, there was someone who was very important in her life, who was Capel, who was a boy Capel, who was a man who was really the love of her life, I think, and for him as well. And I always believe that double C of the Chanel sign is Capel and Chanel and Capel.
Yeah.
Because she created that logo a year after his death, and he was really the man who brought her strength in order to do that. So I could talk about her for hours and hours and hours, because I read so many books about her, and I became obsessed with, this book is saying this, but that book is saying the contrary. So, and that other book, is saying something even different. So there was a moment, it was such questions about, what was the truth behind it. And so between the script I got, that were written, and my perception of her, I had to make this kind of mathematical logic, but I knew that everything, the rock of this woman was the poverty and fearing to go back to that world of poverty. And she was trying her whole life to hold on to that success, hold on to that, the money, or because luxury was very important to her, not for the Wertheimer brothers. Somehow they were more, they wanted to develop the industry, the Chanel industry, and make money out of it. She wanted to make money, but that was secondary, in my opinion. She wanted luxury. She wanted to go away from misery. And that's why there was a big conflict between the Wertheimers, that were, trying during the war and after the war, and before the war, actually, tried to develop the perfume, for example, into many different kind of ways, with creams, with because she was doing also makeup, and she was very creative her whole life, and that was fascinating. The only time she was not that creative was during the war, because she was stuck there, and after the war, because she was stuck, because the rumors about her having relationship with the Nazi, and with the Schellenberg and all that, made her like be in a corner in Switzerland and wait for the big wave to pass. And then she came back as so strongly. And
Yeah.
who could have guessed that this lady could come back with the suit and change the whole fashion again?
Yeah, I know.
It's a fascinating character. So coming from not knowing nothing about her, I became like, yeah, very intrigued and fascinated by what she had done also for the liberation of women. And we women should, all of us should know what she's done, because without her, I don't think we would be as free as we are in this in our world.
Yeah.
It's quite fascinating.
It's so fascinating. And every woman that I know, including my wife, loves Chanel, would love to have a wardrobe full of Chanel bags and shoes and whatever else. So she's still very important in our culture. And that made me think, okay, if I'm portraying her, how would I tackle it? So I'm wondering for you, if you're giving advice to an actor on how to portray a really well-known real life person that comes with entrenched preconceived expectation, what would you say? What's the best way to attack a real person? Not attack, but you know what I mean.
So your question is, how would I, what suggestion would I give for somebody
Yeah,
who was going to play Chanel?
yeah. Or play anyone that's real that people know. People know
Ah,
already know her. So like it's difficult. You've got other people's expectations that you have to work against. But does that
yeah,
matter,
but
or
the
do you just follow
expectation.
your own?
People don't know about Chanel that much, the
Yeah.
woman she was, because there's very little footage of her. There's only one little film, tiny little film before the war that I was able to find, and the one that I was when she was presenting her suit, like in 50 uh, 57. I
Mm.
forgot all the numbers now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Time has passed.
Era.
I know
Yeah.
everything. It's amazing. My memory is amazing. So anyway, so there's this footage of her and the way of speaking and the way and some recording. There's some voice recordings that are interesting. I was very interested in listening to her voice. But it's true, the script were not written in her rhythm and her language, so for me to apply, so I had to find her through gestures and this dexterity. She's like overreacting,
Yeah.
the feeling I got from her is like being on the edge always, and
Yes.
very present, and always on the defense system, that is just in case she was going to be trapped, just in case, because there was a need of a sort of a freedom, because
Yeah.
she came from misery, and that's very important for this. I think the background of the character you're playing is always very important, in my opinion, as an actor, because it's really giving a sort of the places that are feeling dangerous for the characters, and poverty, also fighting the a sort of a feeling of distress. So the sort of a mechanism of defense system of being joyful or reactive or
Mhm.
defensive is very much what I thought that was important to understand for Chanel. That was my feeling. But
Yeah.
you know I was going as like that. I'm not an expert. I was experiencing as I was going shooting and with different situations, and
Yeah.
always to make it true to my being Juliette, to understand how I could understand her,
Yeah.
because I think it's very important for the audience to relate it to a true self, to cells,
That's
to
right.
body, yeah, emotional life that is real.
What really fascinates me about Chanel and the way you approach this character is, she's a well-known figure. I guess we don't really know about her mannerisms, the way she spoke, the way she commanded the space. You play her quite witty, acerbic. She doesn't suffer fools. These are touches about her being a human being that you had to explore and calibrate so that you could play her authentically. I just wonder, were those intentional choices to make her a little bit
Yeah.
rude? Yeah, that's interesting to me.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. A month and a half before, I was playing in the Taste of Things. I don't know
Yeah,
if you've seen that, but it's a
yes, I
very
love it.
different character. That's this has this kind of softness and being vulnerable in a very kind of sweet way, but also knowing that she was going to die. And this one is really like fighting death and fighting, and fighting misery, fighting any kind of fear in her and outside of her. And during the war, there were a lot of fears. And one of the first ones for her was losing her nephew. But
Yeah,
definitely that was the mechanism that I thought it was interesting for her, because she had a lot to deal with. Yeah.
absolutely. You know, looking back over your career, it made me realize that I really admire how you project vulnerability in many of your characters and the way you approach them, even if they're not, even if they're tough, rude, mean, whatever, they're always vulnerable. I wonder if is vulnerability something that you like to explore in your characters because it's a way for the audience to empathize with them?
I wouldn't say that. It might be a door in order
Mm,
to feel, for the audience to um, also, it's the vulnerability is the place where you can, it's a door to transform.
mm,
Yeah, it's when you have to be humble. It's where you losing your illusions, your expectations, or your education, or there's something about dropping something in going into a humble place, and that's where the transformation can happen in any human beings. So I like that door because it allows the audience to connect, that there's a place there that is essential. And also in the storytelling, if we're strong, 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 how do you get human? You've got to, of course, we are strong, but it goes together. I don't think there's strength without being vulnerable, and I think it works like that in life,
yeah.
because otherwise it's not a real strength. It's, you've got to learn your strength, so you've got to start from the bottom to go up somehow. If you're always holding on to that, you know being in resistance always, uh, I think that where you're vulnerable is where you can learn, you start learning.
Yeah, it would be exhausting to have a character always at here. You know, you want to calibrate it back and forth. So I totally get that. And we got that with your version of Coco. I totally believe that. And then I was thinking, these days, Dior and Chanel and Balenciaga and Balmain are all about like aspirational glamour, luxury, beauty on a purely superficial level, I guess. But when it
Ideas
comes
of
to
beauty as well,
the
ideas of
idea
beauty.
of beauty. And that's really interesting to me because they're so revered in our culture. And I just wonder if you enjoyed exploring the world of haute couture back in the day, just so that we could understand why they're so important to our culture now.
What was interesting for me is that you see people behind those big logos, and that becomes interesting because you understand where it comes from. And it becomes from people struggling, people with uh, dilemmas, people who were not perfect, people, who had this need of art and need of creating. They were in touch with a lot of artists at the time, like some actors, but a lot of painters as well as both of them, and they were competing, having this artist and the other one, like today.
Yeah.
Like today, it's the same kind of thing because they know it's the best publicity to show their garments. So when you understand, those choices and how, well, they're passionate. And it's interesting because Dior is coming from a very bourgeois background, and yet he went down, before the World War II. He went through a big depression because his parents were expecting him to be, to have a serious job and to be strong, because they were very wealthy, and he didn't want that, and he didn't know how to deal with it. And so and at a certain point they lost wealth, and the father lost his job, and then he had to live in an attic and understand what it is, what is his need in his life. So then he started off, Chanel, because she started at the bottom, being miserable and trying to lift herself up, and she couldn't. She was a woman, and as a woman at the moment, at that time, at the end of the 19th century, there was no way you could survive, no way. And she found, because I think she had an energy that was amazing. I think she was, in that way, she was exceptional. She was always like she was on a grill, and having to she had this fire in her that was making her witty and interested, always want to learn and get going. That's why she created so many things, and she sold everything to the Wertheimers at the end, because if you don't have money, fashion is not emerging, or you're fighting your whole life, and it's an industry. You have to understand that. A little bit like movies,
Still have to, it's art,
it's an
but you still have
industry.
to sell it. Yeah, you got to sell it. Otherwise, what's the point? And you can't make more.
But how do you make it creative? That's the big
Yeah, and
question. How do
good.
you not lose your soul, not lose
Your
the
voice.
fire why you did that? As actors, we have to be careful that we keep the fire in us, that it's not, we're not taking by being famous or being wealthy, or you have to keep the what's important to you. Why do you choose this or that? It's the choices are so important, because otherwise you lose track of why you did that to start with.
Yeah. I think the whole theme of this interview has been how these people, human beings, that this show has humanized these big names. And then it occurred to me that many people were aware of Coco Chanel's dabblings with Nazis and, the history that she had with that. And the way this show really opens our mind to it is, of course, her relationships. And Claes Bang plays a really interesting version of Sparks that I was so invested in that character and in the dynamic between the two of you. I just wonder, what did you most value about working with Claes and that interaction that you both were able to really spark up this really interesting rapport?
Well, Klaus, first of all, as a person, he seems so nonchalant. He's like cool, he can read something here and there, or have a chat before shooting. And I'm like, how does he do it? Because I'm like the opposite. I'm like concentrated, I don't want to do anything else, but just to because there's so many layers and stuff to think about and feel and forget about everything. And so would I remember my lines? And it's all this kind of inside world that I have to deal with. And so it was very kind of not reassuring. It's not really the right word, but it felt good that he was relaxed. I felt like, I can try and sit next to him and see how I feel about that, his feeling. So it was and he has a great sense of humor, which is really good when
That's
you're on
helpful.
a long track of shooting and long days and all.
Yeah.
And with Emily as well, it was fun to three of us, because we were together most of the time with Joseph, who was playing my nephew, and
Yeah.
so there was a nice feeling to be together. But I mean, we talked about it, but he said to me, I love to play the villain. I love it. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, yeah,
You are.
I
He's good at it. He's very good at it.
he
My
enjoys
father,
it very
yeah,
much.
he
Yeah.
enjoys it, which you can tell. You can just see he's got the glimmer in his eye. Final question, because we analyze awards, we really must talk about your Oscar win because it's so memorable. You think back in supporting actress to Marissa Tomei, Whoopi Goldberg, and you, right? In terms of the win and how the surprise and the whole glamour of it. You had the most amazing lineup in that group. Joan Allen, Lauren Bacall, Barbara Hershey, Marianne Jean-Baptiste, and Juliette Binoche, and you win, you're so flummoxed, and then you say, "This is a dream." I think you said it must be a French dream, and you walked off. Such a cool moment, right? What did you think
Yeah,
about that? Do you know that people still talk about that moment?
really?
Yes.
No, I was very surprised. But the night before, I had a champagne glass and it broke. And I was so surprised because it's supposed to be good luck. When you have a glass of champagne and it breaks. And I said, what is this sign? And I thought, no, 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 no. And so I remember I had this kind of weird coat or something. And
Yeah.
I was hot. And I thought to my agent who was next to me, and said, I think I'm going to take it off because I'm boiling. And he said, no, 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 just in case. And I
Yeah.
thought, oh, okay. And then when it happened, I came onto the stage, and the only thing I could think of it was to give it to Lauren Bacall because she had won so many times and she was older than me. And I felt like, what a career. And I felt I don't deserve it. And so I wanted to give it to her. And when I asked where is she, and she didn't, I didn't see her. She didn't raise her arm. So I thought, okay, then I'm going to take it. And it felt like a dream. I was walking into a dream. It was not real. That's why I say it must be because I could not think I didn't write anything because I thought,
Yeah.
forget that. Um, so everything felt like a dream, I have to say. And then after that, when you leave the stage and go into darkness, so totally black. And then suddenly you pass and you have all these pictures, but like not 100 page photographers, it's like 200. It's like, it felt like 500 ones.
Yeah.
And it was like flash, flash, flash. It felt like really like a world in itself. Yeah.
Wow.
Uh,
It's an amazing memory that you'll always have, and it's an amazing achievement. And on that note, Juliette, thank you so much for your time today. Congratulations on some beautiful work in the new look.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.